to introduce you to today's guest, Tess Martin. She is a beautiful, soulful human whose journey with cacao, the sacred medicine plant of the jungle, has created tidal waves of transformation on a personal and global scale. She is the founder of Cacao Mama International and the creator of the Cacao Mama Experience, whose vision is redefining limits with the grace and wisdom bestowed upon us by love, and her very new program, the Facilitation Academy. Tess works intimately with the spirit of cacao, her guide through the deep work of restoring balance to the hearts of the world. Tess, hello, welcome to Heart-Led Changemakers. Thanks for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much, Maryanne. That introduction was beautiful. I had a moment of, I would like to listen to this person speak. This sounds wonderful.
Well, you deserve that, and that's really, like, I could have gone on for ages, but I've got too many questions to ask you. So, I adore you. So that's the least of the summary that I could give. But I'm so curious and truly so genuinely excited to talk to you today because it was only last year I started working with cacao, and I was new to the whole thing. And like, I'd seen it online, I'd seen images of it, I'd seen lots of influencers and yoga instructors and stuff having this, chocolate, in my mind, chocolate drink, but I never really understood what it was like. So from your perspective, how did you first find cacao, and what was that experience like for you? Were you coming at it the same way that I was? Like, what is this drink? Is it just like something, chocolate and nourishing, or did you have that understanding beforehand, and was it intentional?
I only knew of cacao from a baking perspective. So I was an avid baker and a cook, and I knew about cocoa and cacao from that perspective. And I actually worked in a beautiful chocolaterie as a teenager. So I look back at it now, and there were these threads that were there, but not in the context of a therapeutic and medicinal or spiritual perspective. It was very much the luxury of chocolate and the beauty of chocolate through food. So coming into my very first experience, that actually happened, interestingly enough, at a retreat. And that was now 7 years ago, that as a part of the retreat, they said to us, we're going to go along to this cacao experience, this cacao ceremony tonight. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I never knew that cacao could be used in such a way. I went to that experience, and at the very end of it, where we sat in silence, they had us sit just in silence and complete stillness, and encouraged us to listen to what our inner voice was guiding us to. And I had this booming voice coming through my head that this is what you're here to do. You need to open the hearts of the world. And that was all the information I had. That was it. There was no information about what that was going to look like, about piecing together some kind of workshop. It was just, this is what you're here to do. You need to open the hearts of the world.
Wow.
So thereafter, and again, before that though, absolutely no clue that cacao was actually, its origins and roots were a ceremonial experience. So after leaving that retreat, I then came home, and at the time I had 4 kids between 2 and 8 years old. That's how old they were at the time. But I came home and knew, it was a deep felt sense, knowing there was no voice. It was this, I could feel a pulling sensation through my heart and my solar plexus, guiding me to sit in devotion with cacao every single day. So every day I did what I needed to do with the kids, got them to where they needed to go to, and I would go home and I would make my cacao and I would sit and I would allow myself to be purely intuitively guided to what modalities it was that I was working with that day. Sometimes I would I would drink my cacao and sit in complete stillness for a whole hour and just silence. Other days it was the kitankriya and dancing. Other days it was breath work. And I just let it guide me to what it was I needed. So I would actually fast all morning until I was able to sit with cacao. And it was this, I did that for 2 whole months straight, every single day. And I had no idea, again, there was no guidance or intention as to where that was leading me. I was allowing her to just guide me, and I just continued to show up every single day and do what it was I was guided to do.
I mean,
So
that's,
that was my introduction to her.
yeah, I mean, that's, I mean, just knowing intuitively that that's what you needed to do, and dedicating 2 months to do that as a discipline, and being giving yourself that grace and that space to just be with it and with yourself. I mean, the way that our world is at the moment, it is so the opposite of that, and encouraging us to be the opposite of that, and to really slow down and give yourself that time to discover the parts of you that has been wanting to come forward, is a choice. But it also it does come with discipline. I'm going through something like that, a bit similar at the moment, working with the divine feminine and the womb space specifically. And I'm letting it teach me and show me what it needs, what has to happen next. And you're right, sometimes it is active and sometimes it isn't, but you've obviously managed to pull lots of different components together to form the work that you do now. But for those, before we go into all of that, because I've got like 700 questions about that, but the for those at home who have never really tried cacao, or think they understand what it is, ceremonial cacao is completely different from the cacao and the cocoa that you buy at the supermarket. I learned that the hard way when my girlfriend came over. I said, "Oh, I went and brought some cacao," and she's like, you can't use this powder. This is not it." And so she taught me, and I'm really very grateful for that. But it's ceremonial cacao has to be treated with reverence and respect, and I've learnt that through the work that I've done with you. But even still, I have people referring to it as just chocolate, but it's not just chocolate. It isn't even. It is a form of chocolate, obviously, but it's not. It isn't that. So how can someone determine the difference? How would they know?
Okay, this is a fantastic question. And it's actually a huge philosophical underpinning of Cacao Mama and the work that we have done and are here to do. Just as a side context, I started to notice as I continued my work with cacao myself, coming back to Australia, it had really exploded as a trend. And I noticed there was all of this hype around this ceremonial cacao, and it was becoming something that people would substitute coffee or drugs and alcohol for.
Yeah.
And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but there was no reverence, respect. There was no intent to learning anything about cacao, let alone the building a relationship, a deep relationship between your spirit and your unique energetic blueprint and the energetic blueprint of cacao and her spirit and what you were here to co-create. It was just oh, cool, let's smash some cacao and go dance our pants off. And that was something that I saw just taking off. And again, just the deep space I had created with cacao by that point had been for a couple of years. I'd been working with cacao for a couple of years, and I had been facilitating, but I hadn't started teaching what I did or anything like that yet. But that was a big underpinning, was I noticed the lack of reverence, respect of people actually putting in that time and devotion to get to understand this medicine and what she's actually capable of. And I wanted to create an avenue for people to find that, where they didn't necessarily have to go and sit in the jungles of Peru for 3 months in order to access that. So I wanted to create that. And when it comes to ceremonial cacao as opposed to powdered cacao, there's actually a very, or, you know, cacao of another nature, what they use in chocolate. There's a very simple biochemical difference, which I can speak about as well. And I think cacao, when it comes in its wholeness and it comes as a ceremonial cacao paste, to me, what I feel is that it has the spirit still intact.
Yep.
If that makes sense. It is the spirit of the medicine is preserved, and the energy of it coming from the land wherever it has come from, whether it's Guatemala or whether it's, you know, Ecuador or Peru, or it still resides within it because it hasn't been fractured into its parts. So I think that's probably the simplest way of what I personally feel when I, you know, will ceremonial cacao versus the parts of cacao. So when I say the parts of cacao, for those who might be new to this idea, cacao powder, what they do to create cacao powder is they actually they separate the cacao fats from the powdered components and from the dry components. So they actually extract all of the fats from the cacao bean, and they go through their fermenting and their roasting process, and then they then grind it down into a paste, and they extract all of the fats, and the rest of it they dry out and dehydrate, and that forms cacao powder. In terms of its vitamin and mineral complex, like its complexities, it's still, cacao powder is an incredibly rich source of vitamins and minerals, and it's great for your health. Where the magic happens is in the fats. So the fats actually bring alive the nootropic components of cacao. And when I say the nootropic components, cacao is incredibly powerful when it comes to our hormone production, especially our sort of bliss and happiness hormones. That all lies within the fat. But it's this incredible dance between having both components together, because if you have the cacao butter, which is the fat, and you consume that by itself, you also don't have the same effect. So, of course, as Mother Nature has created this beautiful plant, this beautiful bean, where the intersection of the vitamins and the minerals and those components mix with the different hormonal aspects that then that come to play with the fats, the beautiful nootropic components. And when they come together, they work together to release that whole experience that we feel when we're on cacao.
That's so amazing. I had no idea about any of that, which is another reason why I wanted to have you on the show today, because these are questions I'm so curious about. And from what I understand, there's a really dark side to the cacao industry as well, isn't there?
Yes, there is. We actually teach this quite a bit in our course. There is a very, very dark side to the cacao industry, like all things in this world. They're here to create change. There's the contrast and the polarity. So there's the beautiful side of the cacao industry, and there are some amazing companies and people out there that are really putting in the groundwork to hold that integrity. And there is also the dark side. There is the capitalist side of everything. There is the slavery and the child labor, and there's big corporation that have their hands completely in control of everything, where particularly in Africa, where essentially the farmers and those who are producing the cacao are not even making enough cacao to continue their crop. So they're having to take loans out from, and some of your listeners might understand this system very well, but of course that means that the companies then say, oh, well, we'll loan you money to help you with the next crop, and then you owe us, but because you're paying us back, you don't have enough money to live. Oh, so you need to borrow more money. And it's just that vicious cycle for them. There is extreme poverty. There is a lot of abuse, and like I said, child trafficking and slavery that happens within the cacao industry. And that's why and it's something that we have spoken about for years on end, about actually doing the work to learn about the ethics and the resourcing of your cacao and what companies you are supporting, their practices, and what it is that they are reinvesting in through their companies and their businesses.
I mean, I think that should really be a standard across all the things that we choose, whether it's food or clothing, electronics, any of the things that we do. Where is this coming from, and what are you encouraging? But having having so much control over these farmers and having them perpetuate a cycle where they just can't escape is criminal. It just is. And the energy, and this is another really important thing, the energy of that is in the things that you digest. So the energy of that energetic contract between those people is in the cacao. It's in the fruit and vegetables that you eat. It's there. And I don't think there's enough intention and attention to that. And you can see it's just perpetuating this cycle where everyone's feeling like shit, and they just, they are unwell, and they're not happy, and there's a disconnect from their thought process as well, because we've got all these beautiful machines like social media and the news and whatever else is distracting to keep our mind off that. Because if we had that space and that time, we would actually start to think about, where does this come from? And you would have that expansion. But when you don't give yourself that, when there is no time for any kind of reflection, you're not thinking about that. When you got to get the job done. I've got to get, to the supermarket and get this food and get this on the table for my kids and survive another day. They're not thinking about it like that, but we need to.
Yes, absolutely we do. And I love what you said then about the energetic imprint of that environment in everything we do. I truly notice it in cacao as well, though. You can actually feel the difference when it comes. I've experimented with many different kinds, like many different companies and their product and what it is they have created. And you can feel when something is not right.
Yeah.
Within the ethics of the company or its production, it is there and present in the cacao. And for me personally, I feel that it's so much more present in something like cacao, where there is that medicine aspect and element to it. And I know all food is medicine as well. For me personally, and whether it's just because of the relationship I have developed with it, it's almost amplified.
Yes.
Yes. And I do know that there are lots of people that report the same, that will try a different cacao and they said, oh, I don't know if I could have that one again. That did not make me, like, I did not feel well. And that does frequently happen, but it is, like you said, that intention and attention. And I feel that even starting somewhere like with cacao and creating that intentional space and giving yourself that space and that reconnection to the heart and the human spirit is where it truly begins.
Yeah. I mean, even for me at the beginning, before I started doing your workshops and really understanding and giving myself that time to learn, I'll just sit there watching TV with cacao, and it's like, oh my God, you're drinking this beautiful ceremonial cacao. You've taken the time to put the intentions in it while I'm making it, and then you're just distracting yourself with some dumb shit on the TV, and it's like, oh, that's just, what are you doing there? But it took a little bit of time for me to understand even some of the things, some habitual things. I was like, yeah, but I'm digesting this, but I'm also digesting something else. And it's like, woman, but you, again, in the same way that you're choosing these things and you're choosing ethical things to digest in your system, I feel like that when I'm working with facilitators. And one of the things I especially love is when I find, and it's far and few between, and I'm a hard task master. If you ask my friends, they know my benchmark is very high, because I've been blessed and have had the privilege of working with some epic healers in my time, and they are too good. So I know the difference. The same sort of thing with cacao. The difference between something that's high grade and ethical and something that's not. But I can feel that with the healers that I work with too, in the depths, and especially when you know, over the last 20 years, I've done a lot of work. I've done, you know, hundreds of workshops and different things, you know, tried all these different things, but in that time, you are one of the top 3 on my list, and that's you know, a big, that to me, that's a big deal, because there have been some epic ones, but you are able, in your group facilitation, which is so different to one-on-one, to be able to hold a space with 20, 30, 40 women that you've got sometimes in a group session, to hold that space so intently, and to allow them to open up in ways that they just weren't expecting. I know the very first workshop that I did with you, I was like, what the hell is going on? Because we went into the Krita and Kriya, which I will ask you about in a minute, but then we had the Cacao ceremony, we did the Krita and Kriya, we did the breath work, which I'd never done before. And I was like, whoa, this is something. And then we did the meditation. And then every day after that, I listened to the recording every day for months after that. And sometimes I would skip the cacao part of it, because I didn't have enough time in the day, in the morning, but I wanted to start my morning with the Krita and Kriya, the breath work, and the meditation, and just get myself solid for the day and get on with it. And it opened up a whole new space and world, and started unblocking, like a plunger, unblocking some really heavy things that I had been ignoring for some time. And after all the work that I did, I was like, my ego likes to think, no, there can't be that much more left, you know. Yeah, right, you know, as if. And then it was like plunge, oh no, you know, but such a gift. But to be able to hold a space so significantly, and it's gentle, even though some of the components of the workshops and stuff that you hold, they're intense, it is still gentle. It's not you know, we want you to unearth some of your things and face some of your trauma. Like last week, the workshop we did, I had day surgery on my womb space the next day. And so in that workshop, it was just, honestly, it was just so unbelievable, because I was teleported into this sacred space with my guides, and they were circling around me. I was in a forest, and I just bared it all, but there's no way that I could have done that with someone who was just like, let's just face some of the trauma. Let's just look at what they want, you know, what your body wants you to show, and then just leave you. Because in that workshop, because of the way that you were leading, I was able to transmute it right there, face it, surrender it, and transmute it into something magical after. And it set me up beautifully for the next day. I didn't end up even being operated on, which was amazing, because the spirit intervened and went, actually, we've got different plans for you. Even though that was frustrating, but still, I was like, okay, well, we've got something else we've got to do first. And so that to be able to take people through that kind of a transformation is incredible. And you should know how significant it is. I know you get a lot of good feedback. I know people tell you, you know, the workshops are great and you're seeing, but do you, you know, and just can you really feel that is what is happening with the people that you're working with? Do you know how incredible you are?
That's one way to ask it.
That's spirit coming through, being bossy. Do you even know how good you are?
Firstly, thank you so much. It's very flattering, and I think it's so beautifully reassuring to receive that reflection back from people, from the world, that what you took that leap completely on, I would say on a whim, but it was one of those things that when I spoke to people about what I was going to do and what I was bringing into the world, there more often than not, it was you what? And it was like, why are you doing that? And every time it was like, I don't know why, I just know I need to. So following that without having any idea of where it was going and what it was going to evolve into or what it was going to turn into, it's just really beautiful to receive those reflections, even now, so many years on, that is still happening. So thank you, firstly. Thank you. The very first cacao ceremony that I ever facilitated was, I put it out there completely on a whim. I had been sitting with myself and practicing myself for 2 years. And over that time, these different modalities and these different aspects that are now a part of the Cacao Mama experience came to me at the perfect moment. You know, I would be at an event or a retreat and, you know, something like somebody would, oh, we're going to do this thing called the Kirtan Kriya. And each of those modalities, because I've experienced hundreds of modalities from so many different people, the ones that are in the Cacao Mama experience, when I first sat with them myself or did them myself, there was this inexplicable, overwhelming energy of, this is something that will change people's lives. Without knowing any of the scientific information of what it did or what without westernizing it whatsoever or putting it into its constructs and its boxes and its explanations and being able to rationalize why I had that feeling, I followed that. I followed that with each of the modalities. And I, again, similar to sitting with cacao, I devoted myself to learning and building a relationship with each of those modalities. And I trusted the way that they wanted to be formed in the Cacao Mama experience to actually bring that resolution and completion. And I think each of the modalities in and of themselves are extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. And when it comes to what you were speaking to then about how within this experience, there is actually the scope and the potential for people's quite deep. I have had some of the deepest traumas and the darkest and most horrific aspects of humanity come up in my spaces. And what I have learned over my years of facilitating and the thousands of people that have come through my space is that I am yet to find an aspect of humanity that cannot come to resolve and completion when the presence of the most unconditional love and acceptance and humility is present to bear witness to it.
Yeah. And
simply in bearing witness to it, it completely relinquishes the power that it holds over that person. And I've held space for, are you okay for me to give some examples?
Yeah, of course.
Here? It might be a little heavy. So just a warning for some people listening, you know, some of these things might be quite heavy, quite personal for you. Everything from, there's two that are really coming through quite strongly. One of them was a mother who had been abused and had ended up pregnant as a result. And after having had that baby, mentally she struggled so much and she actually attempted to take that baby's life. Now the baby is fine and she grew up to be a beautiful, flourishing adult and now has her own children. But that mother had been holding on to that for 26 years and no one had known about it. Not a single soul knew that that had happened. And that came up in the space. And she was in full trauma response. Her body was convulsing and shaking in her admittance to that. And I sat there in front of her and just looked her in the eyes. And I was rubbing her legs. And I looked at her and I said to her that I said to her that I see her, and I looked at the room and I said, it was a women's circle, and I said, for all of the mothers in this room right now, who has sat there with that feeling of being so overwhelmed at that time that thought has crossed their mind? And every single one rose their hand. And she broke down in tears, and oh gosh, I'm going to get emotional. She broke down in tears and she said, I've held on to this for 26 years, so afraid of what society or the world or people would think of me because this happened. And so I got all of the women to gather around her, and she laid back and we just held her while she wept all of it out.
Yep.
And cried all of it out. So that sort of thing, where the depth and the potency of the love and the connection that cacao brings, and it's again, one of my underpinnings is that, well, it's actually the cacao philosophy first and foremost, is that she descends from the jungles when humanity has lost touch with their hearts and has lost touch with the earth. And I think we deeply underestimate the power of what it is when humanity is connected to their hearts and to their spirits, and what we are capable of resolving and transmuting when we all move from that space. So that's one example. I was going to give another, but that will do for that.
I mean, that so that definitely answers my question about, do you know how good you are? And that's not an ego question. That is like, does your soul know? And so having examples like that, it brings me comfort and joy to know that you do know, and that you have examples that you can reflect on like that, to keep you inspired and to keep you going. Because sometimes as entrepreneurs, as you know, it can be a bit lonely. You could sometimes get the wobbles and start to second guess all the things. And it's especially when you're in a transformation cycle, which is inevitable and regular for entrepreneurs. It's sometimes we forget the impact that we're having on others. And I'm so glad that you're, just even in this podcast, you're reflecting back to another example. But I mean, for me, I did the work that I've done with you has just been online, and I don't even know why I'm saying just. It's only been online to date, and the power of it, because of the intention that you're setting, because of the integrity that you're bringing in, sets the tone, and because you're clearly treating yourself and your work with respect and reverence, you're able to do that for other people. And when I say I went deep, I went the deepest I have ever gone. Last I think it was Monday night, the deepest in the healing I have ever done. And I was like, I came out of that and I was like, what the hell just happened? Because I wasn't expecting that to, I was feeling good. I was like, what's happening here? But it was incredible. And so now I want to ask you, because I've been busting for this one. I have never come across, how do you pronounce it? Kirtan Kriya?
The Kirtan Kriya.
Yes. How does that work exactly? Because I love it, and because I have a background in kinesiology, so I love the finger modalities, right? I love that, but I don't quite understand. I do it. I actively do it every day, but I don't really understand what, like, it's the background of it and where it comes from, what it is, how you can use it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you for asking. I could probably teach an entire modality on the Kirtan Kriya itself. So I will keep this a bit more brief for the purpose of this podcast. So for anybody who is interested, there is actually so many resources out there now where you can research this further if it interests you, but I'll just sort of plant the seeds at this point. So the Kirtan Kriya is a beautiful Sanskrit meditation, and the tones they all represent different aspects and elements of the life cycle, of our life cycle. So we go from the point of, so sa, ta, na, ma. That's for those of you who are unsure about it. So it's a chant that you sing and making those tones and those sounds, sa, ta, na, ma, and you tap each of your fingers starting at your index finger through to your pinky as you chant them. And there has been so much research done around this particular sequencing, and they have actually investigated and tested across thousands and thousands of people, changing the tapping, the sequence of the tapping, changing the sounds to different tones, and the effects on the neurological synapses that fire when it's done properly and done in the sequence in which it has been for thousands and thousands of years, cannot be replicated by any other sequencing of the fingers or any other sounds or tones. It is the most powerful in terms of the acupressure points on the roof. So we have so many acupressure points on the roof of our mouth. Correct me, it's 63 or 68. I think it's 63. But please, I'm completely humble to being wrong, slightly off with that number. And it actually fires, it actually connects with every single one of them, which connects in with our memory. It's actually a very potent, connected to our memory. So for me, and what it does in the Cacao Mummy experience, I will come back to this in more depth, but it's actually, for me, about it is a modality and a tool that unlocks our deepest seated remembrance. And so for me, I see it as a tool and a modality that actually goes beyond this lifetime physical memory recall. For me, it's an activation of such deep cellular DNA, soul, and spirit remembrance. And to me, that's what it activates. And that's my experience of its activation. So when it comes to the full life cycle, there's conception, birth, waking life, transition, and death. So transition being that window in crossing over, and it actually pays, so like it has a whole tone and section just for that small period. When we think of the breadth of life and the infinite nature of death, and rebirth, but there is that transition phase as well. So it comes back to the rebirth where it starts again. And so when you are sitting the Kirtan Kriya and you're doing your Sata Nama, the intention is to focus on the waves of energy that move from the root of your root, the root of your spine, the bottom of your spine, for those who may not know where the root is, but your root all the way up to your crown, the crown of your head. And with each one being birth is obviously root and sacral. It is where we have all descended from where we have been born into this life. So that is the birth. And then there's the living, waking life, which is your solar plexus up to your throat. It's your personal power. It's the expression of your heart. It's your expression through your voice and how you manifest and bring things to form in life. Then there's the death, that transition into death, moving up through the intuition, moving up through the third eye, and then the rebirth through the crown. So the waves of energy moving through with each cycle and with each round. On a more scientific note, they've also found that there has actually been a very deep connection. They've done thousands of studies on this as well. In certain nursing homes and neurological wards, they actually had the patients practice the Kirtan Kriya. You're supposed to practice it for 40 days. So they had them do that, and they actually noticed an enormous percentage of those that were in the early stages or sort of mid stages of dementia and Alzheimer's actually started to go into remission. And they actually their symptoms actually, their decline, not their symptoms, their decline actually halted by practicing this every single day for 40 days. They started to notice changes and improvements in their memory, in their like their synapse firing and activity, where it was previously determined dead, I suppose is the easiest way to say it. I don't know the medical term for it. So we'll use the word dead, but it had previously been determined inactive. And the activity actually returned and the memory actually improved, and they were able to, if it didn't improve, there was a halt on its decline from that point forward. So this is something that, for me, the deep trust in like, I don't think we as human beings actually take enough time to recognize how unbelievably powerful we are and what we are capable of. This is back then it wasn't a modality, it was a practice and a way of life. It was something that was woven into life. Thousands and thousands of years ago, they knew this without having to know it. They didn't need the scientific literature and the backing and the studies or any, because now it's everybody's, oh, well, we need to prove it. And it's like, can you actually just trust that something that's thousands of years old, that has been practiced throughout time and space, that has carried on, no matter, like the other part is that it's still here thousands of years later. It has spread across the globe and it's still here working its magic. They knew that.
I mean,
they knew how powerful this was.
It's just, and there I am just doing it willy-nilly, and like, oh, I have been doing it every day. I have done it for more than 40 days. And now it makes sense why the transformation cycle that I've just been in and remain in a little bit has been so epic, because this was obviously bringing all of that to the forefront as well. And I'm gobsmacked. I'm literally lost for words as to, I thought it was just like a beautiful meditative thing to do. I had no understanding about the significance of this and the new neural pathways and activating the different parts of the brain. I mean, that's just mind blowing to me. And I'm even more excited to do that. So can you do that on its own without anything else? Or is it best to do that in combination with other modalities?
It is a modality of itself. So the one that we have practiced in that is actually a part of the Cacao Mama experience is that's an 11-minute version. There's actually a 30-minute version, and that's the full Kirtan Kriya. That is the full version of the Kirtan Kriya. It's one of those things where people who actually go into a devotional journey with the Kirtan Kriya will do it for longer.
Yep. They
will do it for hours on end. So it's, what we do is a snippet. It's this tiny blip of what is actually possible. And knowing what everybody experiences in only those 11 minutes, the power that would lie in, whether it's, certain ashrams or places of kirtan, like the devotional kirtan practices, for 3 hours or something of that, but it's something for me that I would personally like to be in a space that's being held for me to journey with.
For sure.
For me personally, it's not something that I would like to just go, oh yeah, I'm going to give this a crack in my lounge room today. It's something that I would like to do in a very specific setting and having that space held by somebody who knows and understands this particular practice far deeper than what I do.
Yes, I can understand, but also you're gifting people that experience what you're asking for. We get to experience, even if it is the shorter version. It's still incredible, and it just makes so much more sense now to me as to why everything has happened the way that it has. Because I've managed to open up and understand and see things. I'm very intuitive, and the visions that I've had have increased so significantly, and now I can see why that it's not just it's not just because I've been meditating and I've been eating well and exercising and doing all the things. It's because I'm actually doing some things that are specifically opening me up for that and allowing myself to go through those cycles, even just in that space. Just mind-blowing, totally mind-blowing. But the breath work,
discredit yourself. Also, I was gonna say, not to discredit yourself either, because it's actually all of those pieces that you have implemented, which is also supporting a deeper practice of your Kirtan Kriya.
Yes.
I
But
just wanted to say that.
yeah, but now that I understand, I'm you know, it's just feels good to understand what the significance of it, and not to be something, because I'm, you know, the self time in the morning is long, and so I'm always looking for ways to shorten it down, to shorten it down, when really it probably should increase, not go down. But that definitely is going to stay in the mix of things. So good. The I'll put the link maybe to the track that you play, so that
Yes.
people can try it, so people don't get confused. But I'll put the link so people can try it out if they want to. But they can also reach out to you, of course. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is the breath work. So to me,
Mhm.
I've done different pieces of breath work, but this, especially towards the end, where you're holding the breath and your body you start to notice where you are having to really surrender and trust your body. Your brain wants to control it. You want to take a breath even though you don't really need it. That few seconds or whatever it is, I don't even know how long it is, but that short window of time feels like a fucking eternity. It feels like, oh my
Yes.
God, this is the end. I'm saying that I'm going to black out, you know, and all the mind stuff starts to come in. So how, like, the significance of that as part of what you do, why is that part so important?
The actual breath hold itself.
Or the breath work itself, and then that whole bit at the
Okay.
end.
Beautiful. So there are a few different styles and structures of breath work that I do use, depending on what it is that I can feel is present in the space for people. So for example, the longer ceremony that you joined last week, where we actually went much deeper with a more rapid style of breath, and we spent longer in the rapid breath. And what that is doing is saturating your body with oxygen. And that's when you start, you know, the tingling and the feelings of lightheadedness. Your body is actually in a state, it's oxidative stress. You're actually intentionally imparting oxygenated stress on your body. Now, I'll explain the difference between why this is good in this situation, as opposed to, you know, in the health space, you hear a lot about, we want to reduce oxidative stress. Now, this is where this breath hold is actually so powerful. It's not a bad thing to flood your body with oxygen. What happens is, and what creates oxidative stress, is the fact that the oxygen actually doesn't it doesn't break apart. I'm trying to do this and explain this in a way that the listeners will, so excuse me while I'm putting my words together. It's What it does is it actually breaks off and travels on the red blood cells. But what happens is oxidative stress is when that doesn't happen. It's not actually uptaken by the red blood cells and then transported through our system into the muscles to actually be used by our muscles, by our digestive system, wherever it needs to go in the body, you know, whatever function it's there for. So what happens is all of this oxygen is staying floating around in our blood, and that's when you get oxidative stress. So the breath hold and actually taking your body into an oxygen deficit, it's actually called the Bohr effect. So I like to think of it almost like a cracker or something like that. It breaks the oxygen atoms apart, and they can then travel on a red blood cell, and off they go into, you know, they can go through the cellular walls and into your muscles and wherever they need to go. So what's actually happening and why that's so powerful is that our bodies are actually chronically deprived of sufficient oxygen uptake. And that's where you get oxidative stress and all of the associated health issues. So by holding your breath and having that experience, because like you said, your body, it's a really great marker for you to see where your nervous system's at, but also where your survival mechanisms are at. So they kind of go hand in hand. When your nervous system is overstimulated, your survival mechanisms are on. Usually they're on and they're high alert. So this breath hold, it actually allows your body to reduce and release the oxidative stress from your bloodstream and allows your body to use it the way that it's supposed to. Now, that sounds all very sort of technical and medical and all of the things, but for most people, they're living in a state of oxygen deprivation, yet they are in high levels of oxidative stress. So their body is deprived of oxygen. So when we actually do this practice and it releases, that feeling that you get, those surges of energy through the body that feel really quite powerful and overwhelming, that's how powerful and how energized we are supposed to feel.
Yeah.
When our body is actually functioning properly, when we're breathing properly. I know there's a lot of information and a lot of messaging at the moment, especially, you know, through the social media platforms about, you know, nasal breathing and taping our mouth and all of those things. They're incredible tools to help you get started. But the amount of change you can actually create in your day-to-day life by bringing more awareness to how you are breathing in every moment is one of the most profound things that you can do. So the reason most people are in this oxidative stress is that they aren't actually taking full breaths, first of all. People are breathing in a very shallow nature in the top part of their chest, and what's happening is the bottom parts of the lungs that are actually producing and sending signals to our brain to release certain hormones that help reduce our stress and our cortisol levels. They're not firing because people are actually not even activating the bottom parts of their lungs properly. There's also a lot around the release of DMT in the body and dopamine. Healthy dopamine. People have now also got this idea that dopamine is bad. It's like, no, there are bad ways in which we can get that dopamine, but dopamine, we need it. So simply by changing your breath, deepening and slowing your breath, you can create so much change to the energy that you feel on a day-to-day basis. So that's what's happening in this. But you know, obviously with these breath holds where we hold, it depends on the space and what I'm feeling and what breath work we have just done. But the other night, for that longer experience you did the other night, I had you all breath holding for 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yes.
Wow, I had no idea that it was that long.
Yeah, we did a booster breath at about I think it was minute 20, minute 30, where I said, if you need to take a short breath in the nose, exhale, keep holding. So that's more of a trick. That's a bit more of a trick on the body. Yes, you're taking a small breath in, but you're exhaling straight away. It's more of a mechanism for your body to, it sort of subsides those survival instincts to go, oh, we've had a breath, we're okay, we're still alive, if you know, in a very simple way. So I had everybody do a breath hold around the minute 20, minute 30, and then I had you continue holding all the way through to 2 minutes.
Wow. I mean, well, because when you're in it, you're not thinking about time. I'm just thinking about staying calm, just keep going, you know, all of those things.
Relax.
Wow.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Something that I've wondered, because there's conflicting information out there. So people with high levels of cortisol and who have some issues with their parasympathetic nervous system, is breath work something that should be avoided while they're working through calming all of that stuff down, or is breath work helpful? Because what I saw something the other day where they were saying the last thing you need to be doing is fasting and doing breath work, and I was like, oh no, because that's what I've been doing flat out. And so from your opinion, I mean, it feels good at the time, but I'm like, am I making things worse? What do you think about that?
I think this is a very case-by-case basis. And it's different from men to women as well. For women, if there are women who, if you are a woman listening and you are having issues with your hormones and with your cortisol, fasting can actually exacerbate those problems. In the interim, it will feel good because it's your digestive system that's getting the opportunity to reset. But in terms of the effects on your hormones, it can be extremely detrimental, and actually make further problems for you later on. for men it's different, and it is, like I said, it is a very individual thing. So I will be the first to say I actually have a background in integrative nutrition, but the first thing I would say is please do not take my advice as gospel on this. The way I think about this and the way that I see this when I think about it is that you have a unique energetic blueprint here on the earth, and your body is a manifestation of exactly what it is you have been sent here to do. Your unique your biological ecosystem is just as unique as your energetic blueprint. And whilst there are certain avenues of, health related things that we can do that across a whole will be beneficial for everybody, when it comes to these sorts of intricacies in hormone health, that's a very individual journey. So in terms of breath work, it depends what kind of breath work. It depends on the frequency. It depends on how far you're pushing that breath work, whether or not you are giving your time, that body, to go into that oxygen deprivation, whether or not that's what you need, or whether you need a different kind of breath work. Like it's very broad. It's very broad. I believe breath work is incredibly beneficial in, obviously if the intent is to integrate different practices to alleviate cortisol spikes, I believe breath work is a very powerful tool and modality that you can use for that. It just depends what kind you're doing and how you're going about that. And fasting's that's a whole other topic. But fasting for women, there's actually only a very small window within our cycle where our hormones are in a place that supports fasting in a very healthy way and not at a detriment to our hormonal health.
Yeah, that is very helpful, and makes sense for some of the shenanigans that have been happening with me lately, because I you want to do all these things, you hear it, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And it's made the fasting in particular has made things 100 times worse because the hormones is the issue. So it's good to know. It's good to know that I'll forego that now, which is awesome. Very helpful, actually.
Please get some professional guidance with that as well.
Have and am, but the breath work was the thing that I was most curious about, because I like to do it, but maybe it's just sticking with the kirtan kriya and maybe the meditation for now, maybe some somatic exercises instead of and maybe the breath work only a couple of times a week rather than every day pushing it, because I do it to pull up. I've been using the breath work that's in the recording that we did to really pull up the fire energy so I can feel energized, but maybe that's making things worse.
There's so many different threads we could go on with this, but also just balancing it out. There are some of the Cacao experiences and recordings that I do have where it's actually a very relaxing breath work.
Yeah.
A very relaxing breath work. So yeah, that's why I said there's different kinds, there's variations on breath work that you can use. And I think as long as you are intentionally using them to balance each other out, in the morning, that more fiery breath, absolutely. You've got a whole day ahead of you. Whereas in the evening, if there are cortisol issues, there maybe not so much.
Yeah. Such good advice. I wanted to ask you, what do you love most about being a change maker, or a heart-led change maker, I should say?
Oh, what do I love most about it? For me, it's the excitement of infinite possibility. It's not knowing what might happen from one day to the next and what the next part of the journey is going to be. And I think that whilst, yes, obviously for a lot of people in business, here's my 5-year goal and plan, and this is where I'm going to be, and this is the step-by-step of how I'm going to get there. For me, I can see through gifts, I can see where this is going. I have no idea how this is going to get there, but I can see it and I trust it and I know it will. And that's not to say I'm just like floating about aimlessly hoping that things will fall into place. Like I'm showing up and doing the thing. But I love that. And I love that every day of this work is something completely different. Every single experience or ceremony that I facilitate, again, I've done this now for, well, it's been 5. Yes. So it was the Scorpio full moon 5 years ago that I facilitated my first in-person ceremony. And not once over those 5 years, I'd be surprised if like hundreds, if not thousands of ceremonies and thousands of people, no 2 spaces have ever been the same. They are all so unique and so different. And I love that about it. I love that I can step into a room and really I can have an idea. I start tuning into spaces before I go in there, picking up on the undercurrents, feeling what's present in the collective, in the space. Sometimes I can do that. And what I can have my little plan of, okay, this is what we're going to be doing. I can step into a room or a space and go, plans out the window. That is not what this space needs. And surrendering to that. So I love that. And even this morning, I came out to one of my favorite places to do a bit of work this morning. I've got a couple of events coming up. So came out here and I bumped into somebody who he's actually a music producer, but he's an independent musician and artist, and he's also a producer. And I've known him for years, and I bumped into him. And as we were just chatting, he said, look, I've been wanting to ask you this for a while. He said, I feel like we need to collaborate and do a tour. Like that just lands right in front of you when you're following this kind of path. And I could never have seen that coming.
Yeah.
But I can see how that is going to so beautifully pave a path toward where this is going and what I see for the future of this.
Yep.
But if you told, if I could never have believed that was going to be a key component to it. So it's the creativity in that for me. That's what I love most about it.
And the impact that you're having on communities and people all over the world is just such a gift, and it is an absolute joy to participate. I know that you're in Queensland in Australia, but you're doing online stuff, and now you're reoffering the in-person side of things too. I saw that on Instagram. That's an exciting part of this journey, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. The in-person, there has been such a focus on the online component and aspect of this. The focus really went into training and certifying and supporting the facilitators that have all come through the facilitation course. So that's been a huge part of my focus. And then last year, before you were talking about when we go through a transformational season, and that's what the past 12 months have been for me. And it's been a big one, huge. So many times where I had that thought of like, surely this is nearly done. Like, can we please? And now obviously I can see why it was so necessary for it to go so deeply, to the point where I considered completely closing down Cacao Mama and letting it all go.
No. Oh my God. Do you know, but it's a kind of, you saying that is actually really comforting. And I would think for the entrepreneurs listening, it's kind of comforting to hear you say that. At the same time, absolutely not, because hello, you're having a significant impact on people. But I feel like that a lot. A lot of the time I'm like, well, I think we might just have to shut the shop. I don't know what else I would do, but if it's a comfort to know that you're a human being and having that experience as well, when I can see so intensely how significant the work you're doing is, and to think that you're having those moments is really it's sort of humbling in a way. But you have to keep going. What this is your mission, and I know that you are, but there's a real do you find that there's a difference in the energetic aspect with those who are meeting in person versus online? Do you feel like the energy in the group is different and how it is for you facilitating?
There's definitely a difference. I actually had this conversation with this musician this morning, with this artist this morning. So what I found is, like I was saying before, with the focus being so much online and supporting and developing the facilitators, I needed to go through that transformational journey to take the in-person events to a whole other level and bringing that back again. Because what I think is, and it ties into your question here around how over the past few years, we have become so comfortable and it has become so normalized, this comfort of, oh, well, I'm just in the safety of my own little home and this is all on a screen. And there are all of these barriers to the humility and the like aspects and elements of being seen for our humanity when we're actually in person with people, when we're skin to skin with people. I feel like there's a normalization of not being felt by others on an energetic level. And when we have the screens, there is an aspect of boundary between us and that exposure, I suppose. It's like we've become so afraid of this exposure of other people being able to feel us and that depth of connection again. And it got taken away from us from so many people. I actually lived in Byron Bay through that time, so it was not really a big deal there. people were like, no, you're not taking our humanity away at this point in time. So it wasn't really there, but for a lot of people it was, and then it's become normalized that you can actually just shrink into the little constructs that make you feel comfortable and do it from this space. And I feel that has, whilst initially there was an incredible power to be able to still connect in that way with people, I feel that the energy of it has shifted, especially over the last 6 to 8 months, probably 12 months. The energy has shifted to it's now a comfort crux.
Yeah.
So originally, I think it was something extremely powerful, and it was something I was so grateful for and that we had when we weren't physically able to be around people the way we once knew, that we at least still had that, and we could still create such profound experience through that and connection through that. I think over time that energy's shifted and it's changed, and I can see how and why this pull to get people back in rooms together is really driving the forefront of this evolution of Cacao Mama now, because there is a difference for sure. I absolutely believe 1,000,000% wholeheartedly, because of the experience of the last few years, the transformation, the healing that you can create through the realms of the unseen, where time, space, distance, all of things actually don't matter. And this is what I mean by, I don't think we take enough time and space to realize how powerful we are as human beings. That even though there is this screen in front of us, the connection we can have with another through those realms, if we know how to use them and access them, is just as powerful.
Absolutely.
It's just as powerful.
Yeah, and it's intention setting. With a podcast, all my podcasts, they're not in person, and I enjoy that because I can talk to people all over the world. Maybe I will have a studio sometime, but I don't feel called to do that. But the intention and the space that I'm holding when I interview people is that there's an opportunity for vulnerability, and I like that. But what I've noticed in the online versus in-person space is I feel like everyone being online is made people lazy, and even more so than before. So I'm quite sensitive energetically. I feel like my gift is feel. So I feel everything. I feel everyone's everything, right? And I have to be really conscious of what that's like, and my time's out from if I'm spending too much time with others. It's like, yeah, I need to be away from everyone. But what I found is when I am socializing or when I am in these groups, people have gotten a bit lazy in their interaction. They don't really want to connect in that deeper way. And I feel sad. I feel sad when I notice people behaving that way. And the community aspect is so important. I recorded a podcast yesterday, and we were talking about how impactful community is, and the in-person community. That's how we were back in the day, and there was a camaraderie, there was a unity that can only really happen in person versus online. And I think there's plenty of opportunity if done well online, and you are doing that, absolutely. But in-person connection, being skin to skin, and breathing the same air as someone else, and being present, and actually having to witness and watch others in their humanity, like you were saying, is so important. And I hope, as the world starts to transform and move, and I think we're still a little while away from that yet, the outcome. I hope that we do return to a place where there is like joy in coming together in a group setting, rather than it being a challenging thing, which is what the compassionate part of me sees, that it's challenging for other people to be together. But I hope that we move out of that space. Do you see, when you think about the way things are tracking and the way that the world is moving, do you see that that's possible?
I absolutely believe it's possible. And I think this is where what you said before, heart-led leaders and entrepreneurs are going to have to flagship that in so many, and across so many different realms of industry as well, is that it is actually the responsibility of those who have community at their arm's reach to actually ignite that again. And again, to be those trailblazers, to do whatever it takes to create that again from a different place. We've had that huge pendulum swing of disconnection, and it is up to us to swing it back again. It's for most people, it's not even a conscious thought in their mind, or even being able to see what has happened within their own scope of social capacity through this time. It's like most people don't even see it of themselves. And the only way that we're going to get that contrast is by creating and opening so much more space for people to actually come back together and connect, and for them to have that felt sense of it, that, oh my, that deep, I've had it a few times where if I've had a period where I have felt quite isolated, especially as entrepreneurs, I'm sure a lot of your listeners will resonate with this, where you go through those isolated phases because of the work that you're doing at that time, or what it is you're needing to do at that time. And then you reconnect with or rejoin a space, and every part of you is like, oh gosh, I've missed this. And I think the igniting that again in humanity is going to be about creating as many of those spaces as we can for people to have that internal felt experience.
Absolutely.
And I think that's how we lead it forward. That's how we lead it forward from here.
Yes, I agree. And you're right. It's the heart-led change makers and leaders out there that have to keep paving and carving out the way, because people are lost. And it takes courage, and it takes discipline, and it takes commitment to be that. But then it's an embodiment. It's not like I am very heart-led, but I'm not efforting. It's just, this is just what I know I need to do. And all the people that I interview, the beautiful conversations that I have, that's consistent throughout. It's just an embodied knowing this is just what needs to happen. And I love that our paths crossed, and I am so grateful for what you've shared today on the show. I've learned so much. I've even learned that I was holding my breath for 2 minutes and I didn't even know. So many cool things. Thank you, Tess, for joining me, and for being a wonderful human. I will share the links to all of your things, but also how can the audience best connect with you if they wanted to do that right now?
I think the easiest way is probably via our Instagram. Or if they wish to find our community Facebook group as well, where we've just run the 5 days, the free 5 days. It's called Cacao Mama Magic for those who want to just jump on Facebook and join that. But via Instagram, we're Cacao Mama International. That's our handle, very easy to find. And there are we are doing more free events coming up. We're doing, full online ceremonies, in-person ceremonies. If this is something that has kind of sparked your interest in listening to what we've spoken about today, that's the easiest way to probably stay up to date with what we're doing in real time, to come and join us. I am actually having the website, website's actually being built out as we speak, but it's not quite ready yet. So I can't send you there yet.
That's okay. I'll keep an eye on it. And when it is, I'll put the link in the podcast details anyway. So that's all good. Thank you again, Tess, for being on the show today. I have loved our chat, and I look forward to doing some more work with you soon.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Maryanne.